Hello, good day, and welcome to eri-tv News. I am Victoria, broadcasting from Canada. These are the top stories for today's news. Ethiopian troops seen moving towards Tigray after Truce agreed. Russia sanctioned withdrawal shipping route clearing east from west. Can Ethiopia Truce end its devastating civil war? Bringing you this in detail after the short break. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back from the short break. Now news in detail. Hundreds of Ethiopian troops covered on a town near the border of the northern Tigray province days after the government and rebels from the region agreed to a humanitarian truce after almost 17 months of fighting. Over the past few days, 32 buses carrying soldiers were seen in Kobol in Amhara state south of Tigray, some of whom may be replacing personnel who were being rotated. Adiso Wadajo, the town mayor, said the additional forces may help facilitate the establishment of a humanitarian corridor to allow aid to be dispersed to millions of people who need it. Their presence may also place the Truce the trans at risk. Neither the people nor the regional government have adopted the trans. Adisa said there is a fear that they will be at risk if the federal forces move through. So everyone is holding their grounds. The agreement reached between the federal government and the Tigray People Liberation Front on March 25th is the closest the two sides have come to a ceasefire since hostilities erupted in November 2020. The government didn't immediately respond to requests for comment on the development. The TPLF wouldn't do anything that stands in the way of aid deliveries, although it's closely monitoring troops' movement, according to spokesman Ketachi Rida. The Ethiopian National Defense Force is now in training. In order to carry this out, it has been engaged in organizing, training, and strengthening itself. The Amhara region is building a very large force. The fighting erupted when Abiy Prime Minister Ahmed ordered in incursion into Tigray after troops loyal to regional authorities attacked a federal army base. That followed months after tensions stemming from Abiy's sliding of the TPLF, which had previously been the nation's permanent power broker. While the government hasn't disclosed casualty and access to the conflict zone has been restricted, there are fears that the tens of thousands of people have died due to the fighting, hunger, a lack of medical care. Earlier this month, the United Nations said 3/4 of Tigray's 6 million people were resorting to extreme coping strategy to survive, and the hunger was also rife in part of neighboring Amhara and Afar. The World Food Programme on Monday welcomed the truce and said it's on standby to deliver assistance to affected populations across northern Ethiopia as soon as safe and unrestricted access to guaranteed by all parties. Ethiopian government declared an unilateral truce in the northern Tigray region where a civil war that has begun since November 2020 has displaced millions of people and brought hundreds of thousands to the brink of starvation. Moving on to the next story, Russia sanctions withdrawal shipping route cleaving east from west. Western sanctions pushing Russia for its invasion of Ukraine are organizing global trade along political lines, defying geography and efficiency. This new reality is creating a windfall for merchant shipping, but risks creating higher prices for European consumers and hunger for Africa. The disruption stems from the curbing of Black Sea trade. Ukraine ports have been blockaded by Russian siege from land and sea, impeding shipping. Ukrainian officials told the Reuters news agency that about 100 foreign flagships were trapped in port on March 11. They were in the process of loading and unloading when the war began. Ship owner Yagas Gajama, the system simply shut down. There were so casters. The United Nations body monitoring shipping, the International Maritime Organization voted to establish safe corridor for crew evacuation, but the stranded ships crewed by skeleton crews will simply lose money until they are being dislodged. Several merchant ships were damaged by missiles or mines at sea, and one, the Estonian old, has sunk on March 10 in Sharon's Reach and now in Sky High. The Russian blockade means Ukraine cannot currently export these goods and Europe is forced to look further afield. Just as war risks is affecting trade with Ukraine, sanction risks are affecting trade with Russia. The US embargoed Russia oil on March 10th and Europe is under pressure to follow suit. That is creating both a drop in real demand for Russia oil and psychological invasion to it. Moving on to the last story, can Ethiopia chance end its devastating civil war? 17 months into brutal civil war, the Ethiopian government announced on Friday that it had declared an unilateral truce ostensibly to facilitate the flow of humanitarian aid and end the conflict without further bloodshed. The UN, US, and host of European states have already commanded the development. The United States welcome and strongly support the declaration today by Ethiopia of an indefinite humanitarian truce, with a statement by the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Hours later, the development was acknowledged by the owner-wearing faction in the TPLF Tigray People Liberation Front-led Tigray regional government, which itself issued a statement in person. Readiness to end the war if badly needed. Humanitarian aid is delivered to millions of Tigrayans threatened by famine. It is the first time since hostility broke out that both sides have expressed willingness to halt fighting breakthrough of sort in an atmosphere where threats of annihilation and even hate speech have become commonplace on both sides. Aid agencies have previously accused the Ethiopian government of enacting a humanitarian aid blockade to Tigray, where UN agencies estimate that some 40% of the regional 6 million inhabitants suffer from an extreme lack of food. And now neither the TPLF nor the government has disclosed details of the ceasefire, when aid will arrive, or even how aid convoys carrying urgent aid will navigate the heavily militarized roads to Tigray. There has been no word on whether Ethiopia is contemplating resorting Tigray banking and communication services since July. The TPLF advisor and former Ethiopian diplomat told Al Jazeera they are ready to observe ceasefire for humanitarian operations and for public service to be restored, but there have been no development on the ground until today. Felsher explained that the truce was not the result of any agreement, and despite ongoing peace talks, the announcement had caught the TPLF off guard. This is what aired the news on Alena Media TV. I am Victoria, and thanks for watching.